And we continue at 2:07 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. And just saying that makes me want to play video poker. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, I've got a warning to any potential pharmacy burglars out there. If you're looking to score some hot drugs, you're not going to get anything stronger than a Xanax.
No Norcos, no Oxys, nothing, because we don't have it. The drugs can make them zombie.
That is true. Very, very true. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former member of the California State Assembly and Chief of National Initiatives at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. You can get him online at texaspolicy.com and follow him on Twitter at Chuck Devore. Assemblyman Chuck Devore, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you again.
Likewise. Thank you so much for stopping by. Well, I'll tell you this. When I look at the news and they go from one story to the next, I walk away from that newscast thinking the world is starting to spiral out of control. You've got the Russians in Ukraine. That's been going on for a long time, and it doesn't look like there's any end in sight to that. You have the terrorist acts that were committed against the state of Israel by Hamas, and that situation heating up quickly. And then you have the constant, ever-present potential threat of China doing something with Taiwan, which, you know, they're licking their chops thinking about moving on into Taiwan and taking back something that they regard as belonging to them. Earlier today, the President of the United States was giving a speech where he made the following disturbing statement.
I apologize. I have to go to the situation with another issue that I have to deal with. But thank you.
Does it feel like the world is spiraling out of control to you, too?
Well, it certainly does. And although, how are we to know that Situation Room isn't perhaps code for the bathroom in his case?
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way things are going right now, you have every right, if you're a prudent thinker, to believe that some of these things are connected, that they are not simply various random acts. For example, the Hamas terrorist strike that brutally murdered and typically tortured and mutilated some 1,400 Israelis, mostly civilians, was supposedly in planning for quite a while, perhaps a few months, maybe more. And you start to look at Iran's nuclear program, you look at their proxies in both Hezbollah and Hamas, you wonder perhaps this was done to divert U.S. attention so that Iran could hurry up and finish its nuclear weapons program. And at the same time, I mean, you mentioned the People's Republic of China and Taiwan. Let's not forget that after the Philippines, getting sick and tired of being pushed around under their previous president, Duterte, elected a president that was more realistic towards China. And ever since, the Chinese have been harassing Philippine naval vessels as they try to resupply an outpost in their own territorial waters. So, yes, things are growing increasingly alarming. And lastly, there hasn't been really a frank conversation from this president and from our leaders in Congress about what it's going to take to rebuild the American military, a military that has been worn thin by a couple of decades of this counterinsurgency warfare, where our shipbuilding capacity at some accounts is 1/200th that of China. And we're simply not making enough ammunition to keep up with our responsibilities with what we've promised Ukraine and now Israel.
When Joe Biden goes out and addresses the public and he makes a public statement about what's going on in Israel or what's going on in Russia, it seems like the news media focuses very intently on the words. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that you almost have to look at it from 30,000 feet to see how the rest of the world interprets it. Do the words matter? Yes, absolutely, words matter. But if he goes out there and he looks feeble and he looks like he is not in control or command of the situation, the takeaway for them is weakness, and that hurts us.
Well, absolutely, and it's even worse than that. If you look at some of the individuals that the Biden administration brought on board to help direct its policy toward the Islamic Republic of Iran, you see individuals who were recruited by that country to engage in an influence operation against the United States. This includes Robert Malley, who was a big part of the Obama Iranian nuclear agreement, the JCPOA, and who is a childhood friend of our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. And so you look at this and you realize that the architects of the Biden administration policy, at least insofar as it goes towards the Islamic Republic of Iran, are individuals who literally were reporting back to Tehran. And a few of them have lost their security clearances. They've been suspended. But it's shocking to me that they were ever allowed admittance into any sort of policymaking capacity in this administration. So, yes, it isn't just the weakness of the president that's being projected. It's the thoroughly compromised foreign policy apparatus that seem to be operating under this president.
Here is President Joe Biden from earlier today, where he was trying to make clear the American position on what is going on right now in Israel, and he bungled it instead of offering clarity.
Is the U.S. supporting the hostages for a ceasefire deal?
Why did you? We should have a ceasefire. It's not a ceasefire. We should have no hostages released. And then we can talk.
He said, I know it was hard to hear, we should have a ceasefire, not a ceasefire. We should have those hostages released, and then we can talk.
Yeah, so supposedly there is a continuing word that the U.S. has been pressuring Israel to not go into Gaza. And presumably that's because the Hamas, the acting government of Gaza, has been using those hostages as a mechanism to try to hold off or delay Israel's righteous response into Gaza. And every day that goes by, of course, you're going to see increasing international pressure for Israel to back off, as if Hamas did not brutally murder and torture some 1,400 Israeli citizens in the worst pogrom since the Holocaust ended in 1945. So, Israel needs to do what Israel needs to do insofar as its national security. And any additional hostages that are somehow recovered alive, all the better. But Israel cannot afford to allow concern for the some 200-plus hostages to dictate the pace of military operations against this brutal terrorist regime. And further, I really hope that they figure out ways of getting in there and minimizing the loss to their own life. You've got this extensive tunnel complex, hundreds of miles long. I've proposed pumping in seawater from the Mediterranean into those tunnels. The salt water would corrode the explosive devices that are no doubt wired, and you could do it slowly so that no one's going to drown, but they would be forced out, and might be a way of creatively solving some of that problem.
We're speaking with former California Assemblyman Chuck Devore, who you can follow on Twitter at Chuck Devore. Assemblyman, recently California Governor Gavin Newsom decided to go on 2 international trips, one to Israel and another to China. The Chinese propaganda machine absolutely ate up his visit not only to China, but to Hong Kong, which is a real no-no right now, particularly if you're not going to go there and be critical of what's going on right now in China regarding human rights, democracy, and everything else. It's illegal for states to have their own foreign policy, but Newsom said he wanted to go to show support for the people of Israel from the state of California, and I'm sure he wanted to look presidential by going to a country like China. Even Democrats in Washington, D.C. are furious with him for going over there and doing what he did, lending legitimacy to the brutal actions of the Chinese government. What do you make of what he's doing to try to make himself look presidential?
Well, that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, he was asked when he was in the middle of this trip or having just returned about it, and he did indicate that he wanted to be president, and then later said he was joking. I think that you need to believe what he said initially. It's very clear that our president is in severe cognitive decline, physical decline as well. The likelihood of his making it to Election Day next year, I think, is increasingly small. And it's just as if no one else in official Washington wants to admit this. And so what Newsom is trying to do is position himself as the strongest horse, the strongest alternative to replace Biden as the Democratic Party nominee. And so I think that what he's doing it makes perfect sense to look presidential, to go to places like China and Israel, and do. In the case of China, of course, as you know, a lot of Californians have made a lot of money dealing with the Chinese Communist Party and trading with Communist China. If you were to look at the various states, it'd probably be hard to find a state with more, a higher percentage of people who are in favor of strong trade relations with China than in California. So he's simply, following the money and at the same time looking presidential. I think you're absolutely right.
If you're Kamala Harris, you have to look at these actions as a declaration of war. Because if he's running a shadow campaign for the presidency in the event that Joe Biden can't do it for whatever reason, what he's trying to do is position himself in front of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is known for playing hardball when someone gets in her way. We saw her leaking all kinds of negative stories about current Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass when they were both on the short list for the vice presidency when Joe Biden was declared to be the Democratic nominee. So far, she hasn't publicly lashed out at him or privately started planting negative stories about him in various publications. How much longer do you give it before she starts to go after him?
Yeah, so that's a great question. First of all, the vice president has not been very kind to her staff, so she's had a pretty robust staff turnover. The office of vice president certainly does not provide one with the same bully pulpit as the office of the presidency. I frankly think that her only chance at being able to become the Democratic nominee is if Joe Biden somehow either physically is incapable of finishing out his term or resigns. But anything short of that, where he's president through the end of his term, and, as I've always predicted, decides not to run for re-election at some point, whether this month or during the Democratic nominating convention, where he could release his delegates and you'd have a crazy open fight for the nomination on the floor, that would be, worth the price of admission. So I frankly think that she's in a weak position. She is a profoundly unpopular vice president. I think has the highest negatives of any vice president in modern history. So while I don't disagree that she may try to do what she can to snipe at Governor Newsom, I think her tools might not be as sharp as they once were.
How concerned should Democrats be at this point? And I say that because there was a slew of Emerson College polls that came out recently in swing states, and it essentially had Trump beating Biden in every single one of them except for Nevada. But he beat Joe Biden in those 2016 states that he won over against Hillary Clinton, but then lost in 2020. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, places like that. It doesn't seem to me that Democrats look at Joe Biden as being particularly vulnerable, but anyone looking at these numbers should be seeing the same thing I'm seeing, which is that with all the power that comes with being an incumbent, this guy is in serious trouble.
He is in serious trouble, and the Democrats have themselves a serious problem because it's going to be very difficult to change horses midstream. They also have the issue, the growing mounting evidence of profoundly serious corruption within the Biden crime family, raising money from foreign despots and corrupt nations. And it seems like every day that goes by, we see more information coming out from Congressman Comer's committee. And so I think this is going to be a really difficult thing for the Democrats to finesse when it comes to being able to put forward a viable nominee with a minimum of negative luggage that can be the strongest nominee for the Democrats in 2024.
Last question before you go. You served in the California Assembly. You're very familiar with how legislative bodies work. In the United States Congress, in the House of Representatives, Matt Gaetz was able to use the concessions that Kevin McCarthy made to become Speaker against him to vacate the chair. He was successful in kicking Kevin McCarthy out, but he apparently had no plan on what to do next. And none of the others who have tried to become Speaker have been able to cobble together the votes, and there's no indication that anyone else is getting close. If you're in that caucus right now and things were generally speaking going good for you and your caucus and your prospects of reelection, your prospects of maintaining the majority, and one of your members goes rogue and teams up with the other side to take out your leader and make you look like a bunch of buffoons, how much hostility would you imagine there is right now in that caucus at him and the others that decided to vacate the chair and create a crisis?
Yeah, so I can't imagine the working conditions right now in that caucus. So including vacancies, you have 221 Republicans that you're dealing with in the House of Representatives. When I was in the state assembly for 2 years, Kevin McCarthy was our Republican leader. We only had 32 individuals in the caucus at that time. So it was McCarthy plus 31 people. That's small enough where you get to know everyone fairly well. But if you have over 220 people, and you think of all the individuals that are in a membership, people who have petty grievances, people who are legitimate sociopaths, people who, from a philosophical standpoint, would be considered, moderate to liberal Republicans and very conservative Republicans. And then you have the small margin that you have, just this infinitesimally small margin. I think it all gets back to Congressman Gaetz didn't have a plan. He was able to kill the king, but he had no follow-up. And at this point, I think it's anyone's guess what happens. One of my biggest concerns is that because the Democrats are so unified, you're probably, and we saw this in California in the state assembly after the 1994 election, didn't we, where you had a series of, 3 Republicans that teamed up with Willie Brown to name themselves Speaker of the Assembly with Democrat support. And that's my fear. That's to me like the nightmare scenario, that you'll get a handful of moderate Republicans that come to some sort of an agreement with Hakeem Jeffries and somehow manage to get all the Democrat support and perhaps give Democrats some committee chairmanships and perhaps change the rules a bit to benefit them. We are on a knife's edge right now. And lastly, I'm really concerned for the Republicans insofar as their ability to expand that House majority absent a landslide at the presidential level in 2024.
You mentioned what happened in California in 1994. That was when a Republican, Doris Allen from Huntington Beach, became the Speaker with the support of the Democratic caucus and former Speaker Willie Brown. I would imagine that when you pull a trick like that, memories last a very long time. Did the members of that caucus ever forgive Doris Allen, or was that a grudge that they still carry with them today?
Well, I think most of them carry with it today, and because California has the recall, the Republicans that did that, and as I recall, there were 3 of them, they were recalled one right after the other. And it ended up that Kurt Pringle became Speaker for only a year because of the year lost with Republican turncoats working with Willie Brown.
Former California Assemblyman Chuck Devore, he's the Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. You can find him online at texaspolicy.com and follow him on Twitter at Chuck Devore. Assemblyman Chuck Devore, thanks so much for stopping by and loaning us your expertise.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to a podcast edition of this show, that just got a whole lot easier to do.
That's right. All you got to do is go to kabc.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. Or even easier than that, download the brand new KABC app. Just search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. The easiest, most clutter-free way to listen live to the stream of this station wherever you are when you're outside the AM radio signal. And it's got access to all the podcasts of The John Phillips Show that you can listen to on your phone or in your car with Apple CarPlay or Android CarPlay. It is fantastic. You can listen anywhere, no matter what you're doing. Although I would advise, if you're a cashier and you're trying to listen to this show while you're working, you might get distracted, and then people will think,
if the cashier is dummy.
Well, there's chaos going on right now in Long Beach, Randy, and we've got yet another contribution to make to the insanity.
That's right. And it's the same apartment building that we reported on a few months ago where there was a crazy homeless guy trying to light cars on fire in the parking lot. This apartment building in downtown Long Beach is being terrorized on two fronts. They're being terrorized by the homeless, and they're being terrorized by hooligan teenagers at the local skate park.
Sounds lovely.
For more, here's Fox 11.
They jump over the fences, getting into our pools. They're in our hallways, stealing our packages.
If they get into the pools, there is no amount of chlorine that's going to clean up that mess.
Oh, no, because you know they don't exit the pool to go to the bathroom.
And then we're inundated with homeless.
Yeah. This group of downtown Long Beach residents says they're just some of the many dealing with ongoing safety concerns.
They was broken our doors, practically, our gate, and getting right there and find homeless inside of the building.
You know, first job, if you are a landlord of an apartment building in a place like downtown Long Beach, make sure your doors lock. I mean, it's for your own good. They're going to damage your property.
Can you play the clip of that last man on the street for a second time? Because I'm trying to figure out if that's Larry or Balky.
Doors practically.
Ongoing safety concerns.
They was broken our doors, practically, our gate, and getting right there and find homeless inside of the building.
Balky.
Do you like the way he emphasizes homeless?
Find homeless inside of the building.
A string of recent crimes in the area, from smashed storefronts to several cars that were set on fire last month in the garage.
What the hell happened to Long Beach?
Long Beach, let me tell you, that used to be a place, well, they always had it downtown. It was a bedroom community. It's not supposed to be this horror flick.
Camden apartment complex, they fear it's only getting worse.
If it happens one night, okay, you know, I get it. If it happens 2 nights, what's going on? 3 nights, 4 nights in a row? Like, there's, are you doing your job even? So, but it just seems like our concerns have fallen on deaf ears. You know, we don't feel safe. We're looking to get out.
Car was broken into 3 times. None of our doors are locked around the facility.
At what point do you move?
You have to move yesterday.
We have no security whatsoever.
And if the landlord tries to keep you to the lease, you say, look at this, buddy. You have put us in a dangerous situation. I could make all the lawsuits in the world destroy your life. Let us out of this lease and let us go in peace.
I don't even think Donald Sterling would try to hold you to the lease if this is what's going on.
We have no security whatsoever, so we are left to these bad skateboarders that are driving through fighting the tenants.
Wait, what?
The bad skateboarders are fighting the tenants?
These bad skateboarders that are driving through fighting the tenants.
All of the residents we spoke to at Camden Harborview Apartments agree that Lincoln Park, located directly across the street, is meant to be a gem here in this neighborhood, but...
Wait, that's the same park where the teens jumped that guy we talked about last week.
If you live in Long Beach, stay away from that park right now.
The skate park in particular draws a certain type of crowd.
One day I get the train and there was probably 10 of them from 6 years old to 12. And I was paying attention.
Those hooligan 6-year-olds.
That's first grade.
Years old to 12. And I was paying attention. I was like, what are they doing? And they jumping on me and I was like, they was touching me practically. It's almost like, what are you going to do? And I was like, what? And one of them, he touched my watch, and I was like, I get a little scared. And I was like, I stand up in that moment, and I get out, and I move, and they was laughing, and I was like, what they are doing? Why they don't show respect?
What the hell happened to children?
What are they doing? Why don't they show respect?
A bunch of 6 to 12-year-olds at the skate park got in this guy's face, surrounded him, and started threatening him and scaring and touching his watch.
Doing? Why they don't show respect?
Camden Living.
Yeah, we might use that.
That could be a drop.
Why they don't show respect?
Camden Living, which owns the property, sent Fox 11 a statement saying, in part, in early September, we increased community security and requested additional patrols by the Long Beach Police Department. We are continuing to work with the Long Beach Police Department closely. But the residents we spoke to say now more than ever, they're being harassed by young people and criminals are breaking in, leaving door handles broken and nerves rattled.
We need armed security. They either need to have billy clubs and tasers because these kids are horrible.
Oh, my God.
We need some muscle.
We need the billy clubs. That'll learn them.
Armed security. They either need to have billy clubs and tasers because these kids are horrible. Parents, you don't realize that you're sending your kids down here and they are terrorizing us in the lower part of downtown.
The reason why you don't want to show yourself on camera is why?
Well, you know what, these kids, I mean, maybe they watch TV, who knows? You know, they like the notoriety, apparently, because the police let them go.
But look at the district attorney. If the cops arrest them, what do you think George Gascon is going to do with a 12-year-old?
Let him out.
In downtown Long Beach, I'm Mario Ramirez, Fox 11 News.
Well, did we end up with the drop? What is the verdict?
Oh, yeah, this is a classic.
Why they don't show respect?
It's almost as good as the one from earlier today.
The drugs can make them zombie.
The news was pretty rich.
Just another wild weekend in the state of California.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Well, this one is kind of safe for air. It's another email about L.A. City Councilwoman Ulysses Hernandez.
Yes!
It comes from Kathy. It's amazing to me that our taxpayer dollars are being used to fund this majorly bloated salary of that clueless trailer trash idiot Ulysses Hernandez. She's nuts and should be behind bars herself. She has horrific grammar, lacks any tact or class, and is the definition of the word...
Again, good catch, Randy. Not using the word we can't use on the radio. Which is hard to do today with the email that we're getting.
Keep them coming, boys.